Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How you doing, Brent?
Doing well today.
I'm a little tired myself.
Ryan, why could you possibly be tired?
The Total Archery Challenge was a couple days ago. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And here we are Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? Tuesday morning.
Is it?
And I'm
It's Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little fried from the fun weekend. But the TAC was fun. We just wrapped it up. And today's podcast is with my friend Ryan Carter. I shot the course, the Mountain Ops course with Ryan, and then we recorded a podcast on the Leopold live stage right at the TAC. And on this podcast, I have an elk tag that I want to change tactics on this year. Normally, I'm stoked about the rut. I want to call in bulls. I want to just have them come in like raging angry, and I want to chase bulls all over the mountains. And I still want to do that. But I also really want to pattern an older bull, get to know the area a little bit. So I'm going to go hunt the area or scout the area in August. And Ryan, there's no better person really that I know of to talk to that preseason scouts elk the way that Ryan Carter has. I mean, there are guys that do it, but not especially with game cameras to the extent that I've seen Ryan do it. Hundreds of cameras that he has. So that experience is somewhat unique. And my Uncle Kevin has similar experience. He knows in Arizona, these places. Ryan, admittedly, he's like, I know the areas and the behavior of the bulls where he's at in Utah. But picking his brain on particularly mature bulls, how they behave. A lot of guys might know that a bull comes to this field and feeds, but they don't know where he beds. They don't know where he may get water. They don't know maybe where he rubs, and they don't know that he travels this circuit, stuff like that. They don't know that, especially they don't know it in where it's happening in August. And a lot of the areas around the western states, you can't hunt elk until around the 1st of September or the last couple days of August, where in Utah you start early, like August 15th.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So there's a lot of big bull behavior that Ryan understands this in this early phase. And so I wanted to pick his brain on this podcast to really leverage for my own use, how I would approach this hunt in Idaho that's coming up, so I could kill a bull in the first week of the season, the first few days of the season. That's really the goal this year that I'd like to fill, get a good bull early. It's also I've done this many times. I've attempted it many, many times, and I have not successfully pulled it off. I've never killed a big bull in the first few days of the season. In fact, I've really never been able to find any big bulls in the first week or so of the season. And typically, before I started Gritty, I had the 9-to-5 job, 40 hours a week, 2 weeks of paid vacation, and your standard kind of deal. And so I'm hitting it on the weekends, and I'm hitting it during a certain window, and I'm obsessed with calling. So I don't even show up or bother being there. I don't have the time to invest in being there early in the season on a low odds, low interaction kind of. I don't have time to scout it either. Like, it was 5 hours drive or 6 hours drive to where we would hunt on the East Coast or on the eastern side of Oregon for Rocky Mountain. There weren't a lot of elk even within an hour's drive. There was a few in Oregon if you got to the coast.
That's a whole different game.
But it's a whole different ball game. And frankly, if I had the choice to hunt the coast or to hunt Eastern, I'm going to choose Eastern every time.
I want to get away from my rainforest and experience dry feet for just a couple days.
Roosevelt elk never were my thing. They never got me excited as much as the Rocky Mountain elk do. So this podcast is with Carter. We get into all of these questions. I hope it's useful for any other guys that are, out there trying to scout or that just want to target a big bull. As Ryan states, and he stated before on the podcast, a lot of these big bulls, when the rut kicks in, it's a mystery. It's like, where do they go? Well, they're going to go wherever their lead cows take them, pretty much.
Yep.
They have some control, but a lot of times,
They're being dragged around by the nose. They can't help it.
Yeah, their behavior is completely unpredictable. Whereas before, when they're in velvet still, and then just shortly after they shed that velvet, there's a little window of sort of patterning behavior haunts where they're still hanging out, where you can maybe capitalize on that. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this podcast. The tack was good. It was great. And I shot the Mountain Ops course and the Prime course. And both were great. I was a little, I haven't had a lot of time to shoot the bow, and I've got the RX3. I took it to New Zealand. Really, I got a couple weeks before I went to New Zealand. Got a little bit dialed before I left. Flew on the plane, took it all over the place, all over the country, brought it back. Still new strings, fairly new. And when I got back, about 3-4 days before the tack, I went and got it tuned again because some of the cables and things had kind of shifted around. I expect some stretch, especially because it's hot, cold, airplanes, travel, and it's new, and it needed a lot of some arrow shot through it. But I got it tuned, and it seems to now be sticking and holding that well. I feel like my arrows are too heavy. I'm shooting a 510 grain arrow, same arrow I shot out of the RX1 last year, but the RX1 from last year was 80 something pounds, 83 pounds. The setup I have right now is 70 pounds. I dropped in poundage, and it's just a little too slow with that arrow. Now I also have the Valkyrie 180 grain tip, 300 spine shafts, which I think are a better match for this new bow. So I'm going to tune the bow up with the lighter arrows, and and then I might do the RX3 with 80-pound limbs and shoot the 510 grain out of that. I love those heavier arrows, but the 180s were plenty.
But they're plenty
180
big.
grain tipped. Those were plenty heavy as well. But they gave you that feet per second. I mean, I really notice it when I'm shooting long range. When I'm shooting slower than 280 feet per second. 275 is kind of that, to me, like a threshold. Anything more than that in that arc you just start to feel it. The drop off on those long range shots starts to be very dramatic. Having a flatter shooting rig out to 100 yards is just, it's night and day. 15 feet per second. That extra, going from 270 to 285 is dramatic. Anyway, still fooling around with the bow. I shot the Garmin Zero all weekend at the tack. I also took it with me to New Zealand, and a lot of people asked me about it over the weekend. How do I like it? Do I still like it? And frankly, people always seem to be focused on the range finding capability. And for me, I don't really care that much that it can do the range finding. Like, that's not why I love the sight. It's really not. Like, people think that's why you love it, and that's the thing they think of. But after having owned one and played with it and all of that, that's really not the thing. If it just did fixed pins and there was no range finding capability, I would still run the sight. I'd still run it. Because the setup, man, you bolt it on, and it's like within, 20 minutes, I have it sighted in from 0 to 90.
Wow.
I shoot an arrow. I say, yep, it's calibrated here. It's like got an Archer's Edge app built into the Zero. Like, people don't get it. I don't have to go and print a tape and stick it on there for my slider. There's so much that's just versatile about it. And then let's say I do have it dialed for the 510 grain arrows, and then I've got my 450 grain arrows as well. I just change the profile within the system. I have basically multiple sights in one, because I can just go, you know what, give me the pins and the profile for my 500 grain shafts, and then give me the profile for my 450 grain shafts, and I can instantly switch between arrows. That's cool.
Anytime you can save time, especially if you are a weekend warrior and you don't have a lot of time to set up your bow. I
also like to shoot with a hinge out here when I'm practicing, and then I like to hunt with the thumb button. And again, especially the hinge I'm using right now, which is actually a sweet spot, Actually, it's an HT. This is a True Ball HT. I kind of went back to that. I like that feel, but it anchors just a little bit different than my Nock to it thumb release. Mm-hmm. So again, I have a profile for when I'm shooting the hinge, and I have a profile for when I'm shooting the thumb button. So that versatility, I would have to completely sight in differently, or I'd have to remember, when I'm shooting this way, I got to add 2 yards to every shot or something like that because my impact point is different. And with the Garmin Zero, I don't have to do any of that. And I can customize my pins. I can have a 12-pin sight if I want on the fixed, or I can have a 3. Like, you can set it how you want. And then you do have single pin accuracy. Like on this course, there were a lot of times where there was a bush obstructing the target, especially I heard on the Sitka course. And for me, it was really a simple solution. Like, I could go to fixed pins if I want to, but if you put like a range finding bino up, boop, and you range the target, and it says, 55 yards, 92 yards, 55 yards, 92 yards, 55 yards, 77 yards. Well, you're hitting who knows what in between the target, or you're shooting past the target. With a range finding bino, especially, it's so much easier to know that you've actually hit the target, because the zoom allows you to actually verify for sure what you've got the dot on. The range finding, whatever. Monocular gets you a little bit closer because it also has zoom as well. But it's harder on longer range shots. You can't tell if you're ranging the subject or if you're ranging the grass or the tree, So on the Garmin, there is no zoom. So you're even further. So a 90-yard target with no zoom, and you're putting a little dot on it, it's hard to tell if the dot's on the target or on the branch. And so in that regard, it's like, for me, it's like I would handle it in the way I would if I'm hunting, and having hunted with both. Typically what I do, especially on those longer range, often I just go straight to the rangefinder, because it's easier for me to acquire the target and range it, especially if it's at distance, with a rangefinder. And it'll give me a range right away. And I'm like, okay, that's 92 yards. Like, I know it's 92 yards. Then when I pull up the Garmin at full draw, or I can also range before I even go to full draw. I'm very good at that. Range it, and it says 92 yards. I know it confirms the same yardage now that I got with my handheld rangefinder. Drops my pin instantly. It's faster than a slider, much faster. Like, I can just get it, let go, pull. With a slider, I have to range and then slide and then come. And they're probably about the same speed, really. But effectively, they're doing the same thing. They're giving me a single pin to shoot from. And I don't struggle with it at all. Like, I'm quick. And maybe it's because I practiced or use it much. But I talked to a couple of guys who were like, man, I had a hard time getting a range with it. It's like, well, I don't really even use it to range, especially through that kind of country. I'm usually, other times I just went to fixed pins, especially if it's 45 yards and in. I don't even need to bother with the rangefinder. I can pin gap and it shoots flat enough. I'm pretty much going to hit, whether I aim for 40 or 43. It's kind of the same. It's still flat enough. I'm in the kill zone. If I'm really anal, I want to be precise, then I'll get the actual pin. But this is the only situation that becomes an issue, though, is when the target is obscured by grass or brush. And that's the situation you run into with any rangefinder on the planet. They all have the same problem. They can't range through something. You also can't shoot through something. So either way, you're often waiting for the animal to step out. But yeah, I loved it. I still have no complaints, and I'm excited to use it in a couple of the hunts. In the meantime, I have my second bow I'm setting up with the fixed pins because the sight is not legal. So for like elk hunting, I'll be using my black gold like 3-pin sight, sliding 3-pin sight. And I love that thing. That thing is extremely accurate. I like how the sight housing matches up with the peep sight better than the Garmin does. At long range, I definitely prefer there's no question. I prefer the sliding sight. At short range, or when you're shooting. Typically, at any animal I'm going to take a shot at, 90% of the time, I'm going to be within ranges that the Garmin handles easily. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, it was a fun weekend. It really gave you a chance to test all your gear and kind of see what's working and what's not working. And there's little things I figured out. 65-yard, 70-yard shots on a steep downhill. For some reason, I shot 5 arrows, and they grouped low and left, like in a tight group. But I missed low and left, big time. Mm-hmm. Low and left, and I can't see that I'm doing anything different on any other target when I'm hitting bullseyes. But there's something about that angle or the bubble or the way my sight is lining up with my peep housing. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's how something is not right though, because I'm consistent as far as the grouping goes. So I'm shooting the same shot. It's not a bad shot. It's just the way I'm lining up is a little bit off. And I found that to be true on a couple of different angles at various distances. And maybe it's the algorithm somewhat in the rangefinders, or, long range at extreme distance or extreme angles. I've talked about this before. Most rangefinders, including Garmin, Leupold, they all kind of get a little bit off. And that's why a lot of those guys that shoot long range at extreme angles have their own cut charts that they carry on their forearm or whatever. But it is a little frustrating to make great shots, but to have them hit consistently in that one, and then not to it. That's what archery is, it's a little bit of playing around all the time to figure out, okay, what's going on here. And, mm-hmm. and at some point I was talking to Ryan Lampers about this over the phone. Ryan's like, I get all that, but I'm not that into archery as I am into hunting.
Yeah.
And he's like, so I kind of wouldn't take that shot anyway. I just get closer and take a great shot that I know I can make and is consistently the same for me. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And after
not
hunting
all of us are stealthy hunters.
Well, after hunting with Ryan, though, I can tell you for a fact that Ryan will pass up on makeable shots constantly to achieve a more makeable shot.
Does that drive you absolutely nuts?
It does a little bit, because in my head, I'm kind of like, shoot. Not just that, like I can make this shot, and it's a high percentage shot for me. Yes, 50 yard or this closing the range or getting in this prone position or whatever could increase mm-hmm. the accuracy, but it's also, I've been taught, especially when I'm in a tree stand, don't pass on a makeable shot to try to get another makeable shot. And I think that's true if I'm hunting in a tree stand and animals in very close range, and I have them at, 35 yards, and I'm just waiting for them to come to 25. It's like, well, I can make that 35-yard shot all day. Make it now, because you never know when that wind's going to switch, when something's going to happen. Where, a lot of new guys, I think, they wait for the better shot, and end up, you never know. Maybe a coyote rushes in, or the wind shifts, or something happens, and the opportunity goes away, especially on a rare large animal that doesn't give you that many chances. So I don't like, when you have a chance, when you have a shot that's makeable, I don't like trying to wait for a better one in general. But after watching Ryan be more patient, I think it's a balancing act, man. I've heard, I have a couple friends who said, you know what, often if you wait a little bit longer and you're a little more patient, you're going to get a much better shot, and that'll just increase your odds that much more. I don't know. That's, I think, what separates the really, really good hunters from the average or the newbies, is knowing when and, what shot to take. And it's a continual learning curve. I get better all the time, but I'm by no means Daniel Boone. So, speaking of Lampers, I've got the New Zealand hunting footage almost wrapped up. We're going to try the Total Archery Challenge kind of puts a kink in the, so it's hard to get work done when you're up there podcasting and shooting and all of that, but it's all good preseason prep. But so the tar and chamois and New Zealand hunt footage is coming together nicely. We also have our last bear video from the season, which is just 2 days of packing. So don't expect to see any like hunting being done. I still think you'll like it, especially if you followed that whole bear hunting video series. So check that out. Be looking for the newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter, and we'll send you an email and let you know when we release these videos. Because you're probably, even if you subscribe to YouTube and you click the notifications, you probably won't be. You still won't know. So sign up for the newsletter. That's the best way. There's no filters, no algorithms. Sign up for the Gritty newsletter. Go to briancall.com and sign up for that. And then we'll just tell you, hey, new video out.
And while you're on briancall.com signing up for the newsletter, go up to the top and hit that shop button, buy a hat and some t-shirts.
Yes, that would mean the world to us. Yeah. Go and buy a hat and a shirt.
We're not very good at repping our brand.
No, I mean,
we're not wearing one.
You're wearing a Slinky shirt.
Yeah, Slinkies are awesome. It's unsharpened razor wire that we give the kids to play with.
I'm telling you, I'm not good at it either. But I do like my shirts.
Oh, I love them. My thing is my hand goes into the closet, grasps something, and comes out, and that's what I'm going to wear.
So, yeah, shop a little. Yeah. Check out. We got some hats and shirts there, and we really appreciate anyone repping the brand and kind of showing their love. It means a lot to us. So I think that's it.
Yeah, enjoy the podcast.
Enjoy the podcast, folks. Stay gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. We're coming at you live from the Total Archery Challenge and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation Mountain Festival.
Park City, Utah.
Yep. And we're on the Leupold live stage. Woo! And we are going to do a little podcast today with my good friend, Ryan Carter. And Ryan, for those who don't know, is he's a guide.
Yep.
Elk hunting guide and passionate hunter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Passionate elk hunter.
Elk hunter. And the reason that, what I want to cover with you today, I've been listening to a lot of elk content, watching a lot of elk how-to stuff, been following my friend Corey Jacobson, Randy Newberg on their podcast. I've been hearing a lot about how to hunt elk in the middle of the season, a lot about calling elk.
Okay.
You know how to get it done?
Yeah.
And traditionally, I've done a lot of that myself. 2 years ago, we sat down and had a podcast where you told me you would take August 15th through September 3rd over the rest of the elk season 100 times out of 100 if you were trying to kill a big, mature bull.
Well, it depends on the goal. If you're looking for trophy class, that's what I want. I want them early. If I just want to enjoy the rut, if I just want to go chase elk, I'll take the rut all day. Yeah.
So that's what I want to talk about today is hunting old, mature bulls. It's a little different than just trying to kill any bull.
Yeah.
And doing that, well, according to you, and we've had many conversations about this, the best time to try to do that, the time that they're probably the most vulnerable, most, I guess, predictable.
More, they're in their routines, right? That's the key, is kind of honing in on their routines. Because once the pre-rut kicks in, once the velvet comes off and they start kind of checking cow spots and doing rub lines, and that's when we start losing our predictability.
And so targeting a single bull or 2 or 3 mature bulls and going after just that bull, that's something a lot of us don't do for elk hunting. You know, we kind of get our tag, or we go to an area we've been before, and we wait for the rut to kick in where they're bugling, then we do some locating, and we start chasing. We have no idea which bull we're on. Mm-hmm. We just know he's calling back. What you've done is quite a bit different. Your background is, you know, you've chased, you've basically patterned bulls with a lot of game camera use, which has allowed you to learn a lot about elk behavior, mature bull behavior.
Yeah.
You have a unique perspective, I think, among elk hunters.
It's just a little different because I like, just like you do. I that's what we love about elk hunting, right? Is that, I mean, you can preseason scout, you can go check the area. You want to know what your age class is before you step on the unit, but at the same time, if you're going to hone in, like these units, these places where it takes 25 years to draw a tag or $50,000 or whatever these guys are paying for these premium units. I mean, it's fun to show up. If you have that mentality, if you killed a few bulls, it's fun just to show up and shoot a nice bull and go home.
Yeah.
That's fun. But a lot of times we can do that on places we can draw in 5 years. You show up, enjoy the hunt, go home. Places like here, when you've waited 20-something years, that's the difference. And so that's where we've kind of shifted how we pattern these bulls. Utah allows us to hunt mid-August.
Crazy.
So I'm in season 4 weeks from now. Like, here we go. And so I'm trying to get patterns down right now. I'm honing in on 5 or 6 bulls, and we're just going to see how it goes. It's still a hunt.
So I want to get into that. What are old mature bulls doing? August 15th, August 25th, September 1st, September 10th, September 20th, September 3rd. Like walk me through those stages. Well,
so we had a really late spring this year. Typically, my bulls are done growing about July 10th, right? And in Arizona, in places like Arizona and Nevada, they are done. They're starting in their dry out period. You can tell what they're going to score, right? Yeah. So now the bulbs on the end are starting to shrink up. You're starting to actually see points on their horns. You can tell this bull's going to be 385 or whatever he is. That's you can tell. Here in Utah, my bulls are just 4 inches up their G5s. My mature bulls. And so I'm still kind of in a phase of trying to figure out what these bulls are going to look at, whereas guys in Arizona, I mean, they'll be tipping over the governor's tag next week or two for sure, if it's not already done.
Okay.
So I'm at typically July 10th. I'm go time. I'm figuring out which bulls we're going to hone in on, and right now I'm still trying to find which bulls I'm going to do. So that's going to push back my velvet time. So a lot of times they're starting to pill velvet around August 10th. It's in that second week of August. I mean, your spikes hold on, but everything down to your 2-year-old bulls will be all polished out by August 25th. I might have bulls still packing velvet August 25th. Last year I did as well. So you might see a few die here in Utah early with full velvet.
Okay.
Just because of that late spring, all the bulls seem to be behind, and I'm high elevation. Most of my bulls are between 9,500 and 11,000 feet. So everything there is going to be behind, and sometimes that kicks the rut behind, and everything's going to shift a little bit this year for me. Whereas some places it might just still be clockwork. It'll all be the moon. It's always the moon. But
what do you mean?
Well, moon phase triggers the cows to go into heat. And typically around your September 20th is when, like, that's your hottest point. For me, the 20th of September, 21st of September, that's your go time. For the rut. If you're a rut hunter and you want the perfect day, those are the days I shoot for. I'll be a little behind this year. I think our rut will be a little pushed back. October might be really hot again as far as the rut goes, whereas typically we're going a little earlier. For my style of hunting, this works great because I might be able to pattern these bulls into the 10th of September.
Really?
Rather than, usually about the 2nd or 3rd, that first weekend of September, I'm done. That's when they start doing their pre-rut. They're cruising around looking for cows. And that's when my trail camera game kind of goes out the door. Mm-hmm. So that's why I like the bow hunt. That early season bow hunt for Utah, we get their routine, we follow them.
And so talk to me about how you're figuring out their routine. So I've got a tag. This opening day for me isn't till the end of the last day or two of August, right? Mm-hmm. But I can still get down there and be scouting now, between now and then. Mm-hmm. How would you approach that? Selfishly, I'd like to know from my own, how would you find the bull you're after and pattern it?
How high elevation you at? Do you know?
I think 5,000, 6,000.
Okay. So the way elk stay cool is they're velvet. Velvet circulates blood. That's kind of the breeze in the air. That's why you see them bed in the grass and their antlers are up in the air. It's how they stay cool. Once that velvet starts to peel mid-August, even without the cows in rut, elk go to wallow. That's how they stay cool now. Now they have to stay cool like a dog. They pant, they roll in mud, they do whatever they got to do to cool their body temps down.
Okay.
Once that velvet's gone. So you're hunting low elevation. I would focus on water, and I would focus on spots those bulls can go lay down and cool off. So, I mean, that's kind of almost obvious. Elk are big animals. Mm-hmm. They need lots of water. But at the same time, you got to remember they got to stay cool. So that's a big part of it. So, I think for you, that's what I'd look at. So
boots on the ground, you're covering ground. You're finding these cool places, probably north-facing slopes.
Yep.
You're looking for this water, especially if it's hot, right? So how much glassing, how much game camera work do you do?
Well, where I'm guiding this year, it's almost all trail cams. I don't have a lot of glassing points.
Okay.
If you do have glassing points, glassing is obviously better. I learned to pattern these bulls by glassing, not necessarily game cameras. Game cameras just help me hold them in kind of like a whitetail guy does.
Okay.
And so the more glassing you can do, the better, because that's less work on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already 6 weekends in and 300 and something miles just hanging cameras.
Okay.
If you can glass and reduce that time,
mm-hmm.
it's more time with your family.
Yeah.
Right? So, spend some time on your computer, look for spots that are going to be cool. North-facing benches are always money, especially hot, low elevation.
Okay. So how would you'd glass those areas for a while. How much time, if you had a week to dedicate of preseason scouting, not just show up and hunt, but you're talking some time to spend between now and then, what should I do? Should I go just the very week before, or maybe 3 weeks before, like next week?
Any hunt I'm going on that's not guided, that I don't have other guys doing the work,
mm-hmm.
you want to be there at least 3 or 4 days early. That's where because especially with elk, my hunters that show up for the bow hunt, I don't care if they show up the morning of. As long as I have an hour or so to get them into their stand, we're good. I don't need them there. We don't need to figure things out. You're doing this on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to want to get in there a little bit, see what those bulls are doing. You're going to see the temps. You're going to have an idea of what time they get up, what time they're out. I have units that elk don't get out of bed till 10 a.m. They're fat, they're slow, nobody's pressuring them.
Right.
It's no big deal. If you showed up then and, you're walking in the dark and 10 a.m. you're getting out of your stand and, well, today sucked. Well, that's when the bulls are going in.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give yourself a couple days, just kind of see what the elk are actually doing in that spot.
Okay.
That's a big deal. But for now, you're 2 months out, 7 weeks out.
Yeah.
Now, spend time on the computer, talk to some biologist. If you can get up there, boots on the ground, follow some creek drainages out, whatever you've decided to do, what area, just start pounding a little bit, looking for sign. That's a big deal.
Where would you put cameras? Just on the water or on places leading to the water? What's your camera strategy?
Water's always good. If my tag started when your tag started,
mm-hmm.
I'd be looking for north-facing pines with tons of rubs, because that's when they're rubbing the most. They don't rub as much in September as they do in August.
Okay.
And so if you're checking those north faces and you're looking for spots that they're just polishing, because they hit it hard in August. That's when it's almost like whitetails. You start looking for rub lines and they hit boom, 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 boom. Elk almost do the same thing on a bigger scale. You'll find a drainage that they've rubbed all the way down the creek. Mm-hmm. And that's a good sign. That's an August sign. That's when you go, okay, so these bulls like to stay in here then.
Okay.
Because not necessarily during the rut, they're more interested in breeding. They're busy. They don't spend as much time polishing, even though they do right before they fight. That's their let's go,
mm-hmm.
right? But it's way more time in August polishing.
All right, so you find some of that, like, because I heard similar things from a few other big time elk hunters saying rubs are their number one
mm-hmm.
sign they're looking for early.
Mm-hmm. I'd put water first.
Okay,
but rubs would be pretty close.
Okay, so you find these rubs in these areas. Are you going to go ahead and hang a camera there? Or are you going to
if I had that much sign in there, looked like they rub year after year after year in there? Yeah, I'd get an overhead view, pull up your Onyx maps or whatever,
mm-hmm.
get a bird's eye view of the ground, and then start looking for pinches and transition zones.
Okay,
transition zones. is where, they split between their feeding and their bedding areas. And typically there's usually a water in there. So you're looking for these triangles of oak, brush, aspen, water. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So if you can kind of find those transition zones, find a pinch in there, because their bedding area is going to be their rub area, right? So you're going to be like, all right, I already know they're in this area. Mm-hmm. Their water's over here. If you can find a pinch between the two, that's a good spot.
Okay. It's like kind of like a funnel right
water
there.
isn't always best.
All right. Why is that?
Because more people walk water. There's more cameras on water. There's more foot traffic on water. Whereas bedding areas, I don't have anyone ever mess with my stuff in bedding areas. No, it's pretty rare. So if you can find a good pinch in those areas, you might have those elk to yourself. And more than likely, that's where you're going to be getting your daylight pictures.
Okay.
You hear those whitetail guys like, oh, he's daylighting. Here we go. Well, every animal lives during the daylight. It's not like they only walk at nighttime.
Yeah.
Well, if you can find your daylight pictures of your bulls, you got a pretty good spot, especially if he's hitting a fairly routine 3-5 days, whatever it is.
So what's your ambush strategy? Let's say you have the intel, you have that triangle, his water, his feed, his bedding, and you kind of know what time of day, like 10 o'clock, whatever, he's moving into an area. How do you determine how you're going to kill him?
My cameras tell me everything.
Okay.
So I'm a little different than most guys because I have this, I've made it for myself, but I have this huge fleet
Spy
of cameras,
network.
right? No, I really do. And so I'm able to get these bulls on enough of a rotation that I know he spends more time in here, daylighting in here, moving through right at the before dark right here. And I check wind. Because in any game, you could hone almost every podcast you've done regarding hunting down to wind.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another part you want to take into consideration once you've found those spots where they're daylighting. Like I take into account which way they're coming through. Mm-hmm. It's morning, if it's night, what the moon phase was. And then I get in there and try to figure out what the wind's doing at that time. So, because that's a big deal. You don't want to go set up on a bench that the wind swirls constantly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You want to figure out, okay, well, he exits that way. And he exits a half hour before light. I go that way, try to find a spot where my wind's a little more consistent. Maybe you have a small ridge where it dives into the water. Get a breeze blowing out so you're not sitting in the middle of a wind tunnel. So
a big part of that strategy is once you have him patterned, it's really identifying where the wind is the most reliable.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Simultaneously figuring out where that wind is reliable and where he actually frequents, where the two come together.
Yeah, because an elk use 2 or 3 trails, but you can neck them down.
Yeah,
if they're consistent in an area, you can kind of hone that in to where this tree is a little more consistent than this tree.
So, is your primary? Do you prefer getting off the ground or being in a blind? What's the strategy for getting close in bow range?
Well, we talked this before. I'm a big tree stand guy.
Yeah.
There's a different thermal 30 feet up, and I'm a high tree stand guy. I know it changes the angle of your shots. It's a little more risky. You're risking one lung rather than 2. You've got to be really honed in on your shot and be expecting something. But I like really high stands. Get that extra thermal blowing your scent out. It helps. It sounds kind of dumb, but it really works.
Yeah.
But blinds work too. And if I run a blind, I really rely on my ozonics.
So you're pretty much running the blind, though. We've talked about this before. You're running a blind when there is no tree option, usually.
There's
correct?
no tree, or I have a client that can't do trees.
Gotcha.
Right. Because trees, even healthy guys get vertigo. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys don't know because they're not tree stand guys.
Yeah.
They might sit up there. I had one guy that he's like, I ain't afraid of heights. I've never had problems. He's pretty young, 48. It's not like he was an old guy. He got up in the tree just fine, but then he got down 3 or 4 times and puked because he kept getting vertigo looking down.
Right.
And so we had to shift it up, move a ground blind in, and it wasn't a big deal. It actually worked out a little better. And it does, but I like the tree stand first.
I think tree stands are they're just totally unutilized here in the West, compared to the East. Most guys won't even consider taking a tree stand into an area when they're elk hunting.
Well, and I think that guys should be capitalizing on that. you go to Kansas, right? You went to Ohio last year.
Yep.
You watch, like, those deer start coming in, and they start looking up.
Yeah.
They look up in the trees. I watched a doe hone in on some spot on a tree that was complete opposite of me, and she stared at it for 15 minutes. I was just going, hey, over here. The animals here don't look up. They don't.
Yeah.
You know, you have freedom to move. You have the ability to draw, film, whatever. As long as you've set up your background a little better, you're not skylighted. You have a lot of freedom in a tree.
One of the reasons, though, is and I think we can both agree on this. Once the pre-rut is kicked in, the tree stand becomes probably more of a liability than an asset.
Depends on how much water's in the area. Mm-hmm. If you're hunting in an area with very little water flow,
Arizona,
you can still capitalize on that tree stand.
Yeah.
They're still really effective.
Most of the areas I've hunted, there's water on every turn.
Healthy elk herds live where there's lots of water.
Yeah.
It's even in Arizona, even Nevada, it's pretty rare they don't hang out where there's water.
Yeah.
They're big animals. So, yeah, I mean, typically we don't hone in on that like mule deer, right?
Yeah.
Because mule deer live where there's no water for miles.
Right.
Elk will travel 3 or 4 miles for water, and they're fine.
So, on the game camera front, what cameras do you like to use? Like, what have you found are just a great camera?
I use mostly the stealth cams. Stealth cam has it's called a DS4K. Mm-hmm. They take pictures and video at the same time. I've learned that I'm able to field judge a little better with a video.
Yeah. Rather
than just the pictures, even though I love the pictures. Pictures can really throw you off. There's a couple things for scoring elk. Elk are just like any animal. There's big and small ones. You know, there's big dogs, there's small dogs. They can really throw you off. You know, I had some kid here at the show showing me a picture of the bull. He was really excited about it. Colorado, an average unit, able to pull tags pretty easy. He thought he'd found a 370 plus type bull. And he might be that big, but I said, the most consistent thing you have with elk are their ears. Their ears don't really change. They're 8 inches, sometimes 9 at max on a really mature old bull.
Really? So
you can really kind of hone in. I break down elk by rules of 10 inches. So when I'm trying to size them up, I'll break down their G2s by 10, 6. Mm-hmm. And I can bring that 10 inches in by looking at their ears. So a lot of times a bull might look really, really big on a teeny tiny body. I've missed a lot of bulls. I've underscored them a lot. That's, as a guide, that's what you want to do. You don't want to get yourself in a hole by overscoring a bull. The most consistent thing I've found is ears. And when I'm running video mode on trail cams, I'm able to really, as they turn their heads, as they look back and forth, you can pull those features in.
Okay.
So, and their noses are pretty consistent too, typically about 12 inches from their eyes to the tip of their nose. But I've had a few bulls go 14 and 15. It's really weird. They're really big, but typically you're about 12, but the ears are the most consistent part.
Okay. So use their own ears to do the measurements.
So that's why I like video mode. It
Gotcha.
Really helps me. When you're looking at a picture, it can really throw you off. It's just like a mule deer walking away.
They all look big.
Yeah. And same thing with elk. When they're quartering away, their G3s look a lot bigger than they really are. Like, a lot of features look bigger. You'll see, like, when I post pictures and I'm posting stills, I like the quartering away shot because a 360 bull looks 380.
Right.
And people are like, whoa, it's a giant bull. And you're like, yeah.
So what's my window early? Okay. I got the cameras. I've figured out a pattern. How many days, what's your cutoff sort of for ambushing a bull like that?
Like I said, typically that first week of September, every routine I found, they're done. Okay. Like, that's when they're starting to shift gears. The wind changes, the moon changes. They start. This is what we're doing. And the young bulls start bugling. So
a lot of the western states, your archery hunt doesn't start till right around September 1st. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me if you're going to pattern a bull and you've been watching it from, I don't know, the 20th of August, 25th of August and all of that, and you've got it all figured out. All of that goes in just flushes down the toilet.
It can, yeah.
Right around the first week of September. How much into the first week of September?
Well, and that depends on if your bulls are, like a lot of my bulls don't summer by their cows, right?
Yeah.
If you got a healthy cow herd, though, there's a lot of places in like Colorado where your bulls summer where your cows are. The herd's healthy, the elevation's right, there's water everywhere. It's not too hard on the calves.
So all that scouting kind of stays the same.
It might stay the same in that area because the bulls don't have to move too far. But if you're in an area like my area, like all I get are bulls on camera. If I have cows, I pull them because the bulls aren't there.
Why are the cows and the bulls not summering in the same spots?
It's just difficulty for calves. The cows have to be in a safe place so their calves can flee from predators. And so, bull elk is different. They don't have as big of a predator threat.
Okay.
Coyotes aren't a threat to a bull elk, and a cow either, really. But the calves, they are.
Gotcha.
So that's why they summer in different places, and that's why things will shift for me, because there's no cows there. Those bulls have got to migrate. Some of my bulls will migrate 30 miles to rut.
Whew.
It's a jump.
Dang.
But there's a lot of areas where they don't.
That's not the case.
That's not the case.
Okay, so if the season opens September 1st, you've got a few days.
Yeah, you've got a window. I wouldn't throw it out the door till the 10th.
Okay.
And for me, that's why I say this year I might have till rifle season to get this done. We're running behind this year. It might be good. Might not. It's a hunt. We don't want it to be easy.
Well, it's a totally different thing trying to kill an old bull, because in the past I've done a lot of early season type calling, like the Jim Horn early season. Remember where we just sound like a herd of elk and breaking branches, and it's sort of like life is a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're gonna bite into. You don't know what that bull is gonna be that comes in. Generally, though, what I've experienced doing that sort of early season calling, they come in silent, and we've killed a lot of bulls. In fact, that's probably the primary way we've killed bulls early season, and it was just to kill a bull.
Right.
And they're a young bull. He can't help it. He hears the sounds of rutting. He hears the sounds of elk, trees breaking. You sound like a whole herd. They come in and they get shot. Mm-hmm. But that's I've never, ever called in an old bull that way.
I was going to say, that's the difference between hunting a 5 and 6 year old bull and 9-year-old bull. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, and that's where your patterns hang a little longer, because
I haven't even had a 5 or 6 year old come in.
Old bulls don't even really rut. That's why I say, like, in Labor Day, that's when your young bulls start piping off. Uh-huh. But their cows aren't really hot till the 20th. But that's when they start feeling like, hey, this is my year, this is my time. And that you can capitalize on those bulls. But a lot of times, those older bulls, you might have till the 15th before they even start sniffing around. Yeah. They're going to stay in their patterns. They're going to stay in their routine a little bit more, because even when the rut hits, they don't push herds. A lot of the times that they skirt herds. They'll stay in, they'll grab the hot cow, take care of her, leave again. That's why their body fat stays up. It's half the reason they're bigger. They make it through winter. They all in all, they're more healthy of an animal because they don't do what the young bulls do.
They don't waste time.
Right. And so you can hold that pattern just a little bit longer. So I wouldn't say like September 5th, I'm done. I'm not even going to scout because they're not going to be there. Mm-hmm. That's not the case. If you got cows in the area, the game shifts a little bit. If you're hunting an older age class, if you're on a unit that's managed for 6 to 8 year old bulls rather than 4 to 6 year old bulls, yeah, you're going to have a better chance at keeping those patterns a little bit longer, because they don't care. They don't, until they smell a hot cow, they don't fire up. They'll do their thing. So their routine's a little better.
Okay. And if you were going to hit an area, let's say a drainage, and you got a camera, you got a photo of a nice bull in that area, how many cameras are you going to put to use in that spot, and how broad a net are you going to cast with those cameras?
It kind of depends on the area. I have areas that I've got a routine on a bull with just 5 or 6 cameras. I haven't had to oversaturate it, but I've had bulls that I couldn't figure out that I had 18, 20 running. And and it's not that I wasn't getting his picture, I wasn't getting his pattern. And that's the frustrating part of some of those old bulls. It's because you just can't get them to tick right. Younger bulls are easier to pattern. They're more routine.
So 4 weeks ago or so, I had Kip Fowler on the podcast.
Kip's awesome.
Yeah. And we talked about mule deer because he's a mule deer slaying fool. Yeah. And the one thing that that really, stood out was the amount of preseason scouting work that Kip puts in, just 2 days at a time, maybe on the weekend. But it's like he's made probably before the season starts, he's made a minimum of 4 2-day trips, overnight trips to glass, scout, and look around. If he can, he'll do more. But he bombs up there, gets work done, bombs up there, scouts all that evening, goes to bed, wakes up, scouts early that morning, and then comes home. And by the time the season starts, he has 2, 3, or more target bucks figured out, where they're at, where their location is,
and where they run to.
Yep. He's got it all mapped out.
Yeah, Kip's impressive.
And then he starts the season. When I talk to 9 out of 10 mule deer hunters, well, I'd say more, they never do that. They don't preseason scout like that.
Kip's a bow hunter, so that's different. He's allowed to hunt in August. That's a little different. I could pull up 4 or 5 guys that have consistently killed giant deer like him. That's what they do. And it's 4 and 5 day trips. Like, you haven't had Matt Bateman on. He's one of Kip's best friends. He does the same thing. Guys like Sean Morgan, a lot of these Utah guys, because we get a hunt so early, that's how they get it done.
What intrigues me about that conversation was 2 things. One is applying the same technique to elk. When I say there's very few mule deer hunters that do it, and I'd say they're far more patternable, and the seasons are more friendly across the West for doing that.
Maybe for high altitude muleys, I'd agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about elk hunting and applying that same technique, I don't. Other than you and a few others, I don't hear a lot of that.
Well, a lot of guys can't hunt as early as me.
No,
that's a difference, right? Like, you go to Idaho, you got September 1.
Yeah.
Wyoming, you usually don't
Oregon,
start hunting until September.
Sometimes
15th.
Oregon starts early, like the 25th.
Oregon's a little bit early.
It rolls each year.
Arizona's got some early tags. There's not a lot of guys that do what I do because that's not what you think of in elk hunting.
Well, the rut is attractive. Right. The bugling is fun.
And the other thing is, there's a lot of public land muleys. You can kill a giant muley in 14 states and 3 countries. You can kill a 400-inch bull. They consistently come out of 3 states.
Yeah.
There's 6 states, 7 states that actually produce that caliber of bull.
Yeah.
But the consistent ones, there's 3 states.
That's true.
There's 20 units tops.
I just want to kill a big bull.
Yeah. Well,
not a 400-inch bull.
You don't get a lot of guys that do what I do because there's not a lot of guys that need to.
Right.
A lot of tags don't fit the window that I hunt. A lot of units, a lot of states don't have the age class that I do. So what I do is weird because Utah's weird. Right?
Right.
But it works for me. It works for here. It works for my age class.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are quite a few guys that do what Kip does. And it's awesome.
So let's move forward a little bit. Let's say the patterning you had down, for whatever reason, you didn't pull it off. The ambush didn't work out, whatever.
Which happens a lot of times.
Right.
Right.
And now they're starting to roam a little bit and move around. Maybe it's after September 10th, September 7th, something like that. How do you change strategy at that point?
I keep the strategy. So the nice thing about hiring a guide.
Yeah.
Which
I'm never going to do.
That guy's on that unit every single year.
Well, maybe I will if I draw some 22-year.
Say this new tag you got that starts August 28th or whatever we just talked about. Say that works out.
Yeah.
Say you can get that tag every single year.
Yep.
I promise you by year 5, you're going to be a lot less stressed August 28th than you are this year.
Right.
And that's when you hire a guide, that guy's on that unit every single year. I already know my target bulls. I already know where I'm going. I knew before we bought a lot of the tags what we were chasing.
Right.
There's not a lot of pressure on me other than God, did they get as big as last year?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
you kind of have it figured out year after. There's a lot of units I've spent a lot of time in, and I feel the same way. Only it's somewhat like the Wasatch Front with mule deer, where the areas I've gone are just really, really high pressure with other hunters. A lot of what I'm trying to do is like what Kip is doing. I'm trying to find an area where I can go after an older animal and not have some other dude come in and blow it up before I can get my opportunity.
Right.
And that's kind of a lot of what I do. So I try to go deep and far away from other people and try to get where other people aren't willing to hike or go.
Yep.
It seems like nowadays
the public land game.
I still run into a lot of people now. There's just more guys getting after it than there has been in the past.
Well, I still think if I was going to go hunt giant mule deer, I wouldn't focus on the Wasatch Front.
Yeah.
I got a lease in Nebraska that I think I'd get it done even better.
Right.
There's states like South Dakota that guys aren't even touching that have giant mule deer. So I would be like, I'm going to go somewhere there's less people.
Yeah.
I thought you can do it without hiking as hard and as far. It's like here, like we have giant bulls because the tags are hard to get.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's just figuring out the game.
That's how I feel about this area. You know, a couple of the areas I'm hunting this year. Last year I was in a unit where I ran into a hunter every few hundred yards. Mm-hmm. I was there with Corey Jacobson, and Corey was the same way. He's like, man, I have not been to a unit with this many hunters in it in years. And it really made it tough because every time we got a bull going and starting to come in, we also brought in 3 or 4 other nearby hunters. Mm-hmm. And it just became, it was a zoo. You couldn't get anything done because there were so many other guys crashing your calling.
Right.
But, you know, as you move to some other areas, I hunted an area in Montana last year with my buddy Dwayne, and the exact opposite. We didn't run into anybody. And it was just in Montana, there's a bit of a draw, but it's just the general season draw, elk tag. And this is just a public land area we just walked into. We had herds and herds of bulls and elk all to ourselves. Yeah. And for 3 days, I hunted that and almost tagged out every day. It's just a totally different situation.
You know, my grandpa we used to ice fish a lot, right?
Uh-huh.
And he always says, fishing slow, just move. Get up, move. Don't sit there on that hole forever. You can say that about a lot of states, a lot of elk spots. Mm-hmm. There's always better. It's just finding the right spot. You know, this early season tag you have might be money. Might be something you can do every single year. Might turn out to be awesome. You might get 5 good years out of it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, that's my thing this year.
But if it sucks, fishing slow, move.
I'd like to spend a week before the season starts, you know, figuring out where an elk is. Maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe longer, before opening day.
Yeah.
But I'd like to spend another maybe 5 days or so scouting the area. I don't know, maybe around the first week of August, second week of August. Mm-hmm. By then, I'll have put quite a bit of time in learning the area before opening day even starts.
Right.
The only concern there is, you know, how times we all have limited time. How much could that pay off? And the reason I say that is I've done that before in some units in Oregon where I have put in serious time, weeks of time, and then opening day starts and none of it meant every elk left.
Were you mad about it?
I was ticked. I was like, I'm like, bulls are here. You're stoked because you're getting all this action on your camera, and you're thinking day one I am going to tag out, and then day one it's like everything changed. I learned that I did not want to hunt that area. That's what I learned.
See, and I'm a little different that way because I like the scouting more than the hunt. Like, that's why I don't rifle hunt, is because I'm okay not killing. I'm okay. And so I love the scout. So it just teaches me, okay, yeah, I just wasted a lot of time and 10 trips of gas. But next year I'm going to put cameras in here. Now I got to figure out where they're going. And you still have 10 days to figure out Okay, they were all here. Where did they go?
Because every 3 days they would come to these couple of spots, and there would be 5 or 6 velvet bulls. No cows ever.
Right.
And literally 2 days before the season starts, one day, gone forever. The whole rest of the month, they never came back to that spot. And they were there like for 4 weeks in a row. What the heck?
Well, they rubbed their velvet off, right?
Right.
They didn't need, they're probably still standing right there. They probably just got some pressure. They went a little nocturnal. Like, they don't disappear. It's still a hunt. I don't know.
That's when I was like, screw that preseason crap on elk. Let's just go kill them.
I'd be mad if that was a tag I waited 15 years for.
Yeah.
If I waited that long, at the same time, I'd be like, I might hire a guide.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So I don't know. They don't just disappear. They're still there. It's just, okay, now I got 8 days to do, or whatever your tag is.
Right.
Figure out where this bull went. Like, now the hunt's on.
Well, I was really enjoying some of the Born and Raised Outdoors recent videos they put out. They have like a 1 through 6 or 1 through 5, how to hunt elk series they put out over the last week or so.
Okay. And I haven't watched them. I'll have to tune in.
And pretty much across the board, their strategy was, mostly it's, and they admit it, they talk about it. They don't, and traditionally haven't done any real preseason work. Mm-hmm. They're not doing really cameras. They're not doing, they're finding an area on a map that they're going to hit, maybe a state they're going to go to. They've talked to the biologists, so on.
Okay.
But they're pretty much just landing there for the first time, boots on the ground, and their locate, bugle,
and what's their age class?
Well, definitely younger. Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. Or especially early. They don't care if it's a big bull or a little bull.
They're teaching people how to elk hunt.
How to kill an elk.
That's the part of elk hunting we all love. In all reality, we want the rut. We want to chase the bull screaming. We just want to find, this is where that magic happens. Mm-hmm. This is where it gets crazy. And that's fun. That's why we all love elk hunting. That's why people are here at this event.
Yeah.
Is because everyone involved with the RMEF has this, they love elk.
Yeah.
It's just ingrained in them. They're passionate about it. We all invest money in it. We all go out of our way, and it's for those moments. What I do, like I said from the very get-go, is when you're going after a specific trophy age class.
Yeah.
And it's different. And it's important too. Everything has its kind of role. But because we wait so long here, that's why I've shifted what I do a little bit. And I'm successful at it at times.
I just really like ambush hunting. When I look at all the elk I have actually bugled in and killed,
yeah,
and been part of, we've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of that in years past. Like I said, you don't know what's going to come in.
Right.
And then in that moment, you're deciding whether you're going to take it or not. And any mature bull with a bow is incredible, yeah. Right? Any bull at all with a bow, I would say, is incredible.
I agree. Yep.
But anymore, I just find the ambush part extremely rewarding, almost more than I do the calling. I don't know. I'm just, I think, wired a little bit that way. We've talked about this. I love whitetail hunting because it's that ambush kind of figure out what they do. It's a chess match almost. It's who can be the most patient, the most sneaky. I like that. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. And then when they come in, I like the scenario that plays out. They don't know I'm there, and there's a certain sense of satisfaction that comes from that. And then slipping the arrow in has its thing. Where when I'm calling a bull in, it's coming in, it's outraged, it's angry, it's exciting, and it's cool.
But you've done it.
I have.
That's the difference. So, a lot of these guys wait 20 years for their big chance at big bulls. They've hunted spikes with their bows and rifles their whole lives. So when they finally do get a tag, like here in this state, mm-hmm. for example, alone, it's like, that's what I want to kill one that just came in blowing snot and pissed off, and he may not be the biggest, but that's the experience I wanted.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
You've done it a few times.
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell people. I'm like, don't wait for your Utah, Nevada, Arizona tag. Don't hold off on elk your whole life. There's plenty of opportunity if you start looking. Like, get in, kill elk. Get in and experience that. And then once you draw these big bull hard unit tags, do what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right? Let's ambush them. Let's pattern them. Let's figure out what our age class is and capitalize on the biggest animal in there. Why not?
Well, a couple months ago, we actually watched, we did a podcast, and we broke down Western Hunter with Nate Simmons, a little hunt that he did.
Uh-huh.
And it was early season. And he got after it early, and there was like a single bull in kind of velvet, and then it was actually hard-horned, but it was early, kind of hanging out by itself doing a few things.
Yep.
And he was able to kill it in the first few days. He really hadn't. He was really planning on coming back 2 weeks later when the rut was in full swing. Yeah, that was his.
They're
main
on their
plan.
way out when that bull slipped up.
But he was like, you know what? I got some time. Why not spend a few days, kind of doing it early and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't bugling. It wasn't really rutting.
Killed him like a mule deer. Got the wind right.
The whole ambush piece, the sneaking in, all that just really appealed to me. I found the hunt really cool.
Yep. And he did it perfect. I mean, he just did. Like, that's hunting. Like, he was on his way out. They slept in that morning. He's getting ready to go home.
He's a big bull, too.
He's out there drinking his coffee and like, holy crap, is that bull? But, you know, I always tell people elk hunting, 60% hard work, 40% luck. You have to have both.
Yeah.
His luck played out like that was meant to roll down, and it worked out. The wind was right. The bull was there. He got it done. It was fun to watch.
Yeah.
But, you know, to each their own. I think had he never killed other bulls, I could see how he'd be like, I think I want to wait till September.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. We all love the bugle.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Right. I just feel like the bugle is 100%. What do you call it? Like the bugle part of the season's a given.
I hate the rut.
If my tag has not been filled, it's a given. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be chasing bugles.
Yeah. Right.
It's not. For me, I've done it so much, like for years, that there's nothing stressful or complex about it. Mm-hmm. It's grueling hiking and tons of ground covered and lots of bugling, cat road shuffle style.
Yeah.
And then it's chasing bugles and getting bulls to come in, doing your whatever. Like that I already know. I've done it my whole life.
Right.
That I get. And that will happen if I don't tag out early. Right. But the whole idea of doing what you do and applying it to a tag I can get every couple of years in an area and putting some time in and learning that stuff, it's really compelling.
Well, to a veteran hunter, I think that's the appeal. That's what you need. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. Right? There's nothing wrong with the rut. I hate the rut. I've been there. I've done it. I want to do a T-shirt since I hate the rut, because what I get tired of is, like, I've had days we've called in 23 bulls, and the biggest one was 330. Nothing wrong with a 330 bull, but on a unit that you waited 20 years for, there is something wrong with 330 bull. So you go to bed and your ears are ringing with bugles, and you just know I got to go back tomorrow, do the same thing, 20 more bulls. You know, the
just
wind's
hoping
right.
The one you're targeting actually shows up.
Yep. And sometimes those bulls hang up, and you spend 3 hours on one bull, and he finally gives you a glimpse, and dude, you just want to beat your head against a tree when this bull you're not looking for comes through.
True.
I'm not like.
But you never get tired of being in what they like the
never.
magic circle.
I love every second of it. It's just hard. For
you hate
what I
it
do.
and you love it.
Dude, if you're on a public land spot, you're on a unit you can hunt every year, every 3 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. Love every second of it. Just be in the moment, film it, love it, be there. That's awesome. I just hunt units that it's your lifetime tag.
So let's go back to, this early season stuff, and you're putting the cameras up and you're going from the water and you're doing all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Tell me, okay, what are the major mistakes that some people make during that period? We both know with like whitetail, for example, you can go in, stink it up, and they're gone. Mm-hmm. Tell me about elk. Like, is there something a guy should avoid doing? Is it okay to go in and check the cameras every couple of days? Is it something you do every 7 days in between? How do elk respond to scent in their area?
Well, and that all depends on the topography, right? If you have one bedding area, say you're out in the desert and you have a weird aspen patch that they like to bed in every day, and they'll migrate 3 and 4 miles just to make sure they're in those aspens by daylight. You don't want to go stomping in there checking your camera every week. That could be a mistake. My area is that I think I could walk in every day and check a camera. I think the bulls sidestep me and then walk back in. They don't stress too hard. It's very rare I have them run a long ways. Mistakes I see in my areas, Utah, you're allowed to bait. I see a lot of over baiting going on. Just guys, like, I'll come into an area that has a bunch of cameras because it is public land. And it's nothing to be mad about. It's something that you have to learn to deal with. It's part of the game. But I see guys over bait. They set up 4 or 5 bait piles. It can screw up patterns. It'll throw people around. I see it more with outfitters than anything else. And it's part of the game. That's one of the mistakes.
Does bait work?
Oh, yeah, bait works. Bait works with all animals.
Right.
Like, if you have the right stuff. But it all depends on the mineral content and the area you're at and what you're putting out. And I don't know an elk on the planet that doesn't like apples. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
It's a blacktail are.
But who packs those freaking things in? I don't know. It's not me.
They'll be gone in 10 minutes.
There's places that don't allow it. And so,
yeah.
That's just one of the few mistakes I see. Preseason, the biggest mistake is guys not putting enough feet on the ground. That's the biggest mistake I see is guys not spending enough time in the area. You have to know which way the wind goes. You have to know their exit routes. You have to know their travel lines, which benches they like. Feet on the ground is the whole game plan. So if there's a mistake that is a constant, that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, Kip mentioned, it sounded to me a lot of those mule deer in those high alpine areas, when they're pushed, when they get bumped, they have a favorite exit route, one or two. Kip has figured out where those are generally, or at least he predicts where they will be. And a lot of their deer they kill are 2 guys, one guy going in for the kill and one guy waiting on the exit route. Yeah. And killing on the exit route.
I don't know if Kip does this, but that's what
Kip said. That was one of the things that he'll do.
Well, a lot of times they'll go in and kick them up just to see where they run.
Yeah.
And then they'll pull them back in. They'll throw out apples, get them back on their pattern again. But then once the hunt kicks in, they know, okay, we're not going to set up where he typically walks out. Or one of us will sit there, but let's put the other one over here where he always peels that saddle that he always exits.
Yeah. Crazy.
No, it's smart. It's why, like, if I, do
you set up tree stands on some exit routes?
Yeah. Donna Pickett was opening day. I had 3 bulls watching the bull I'd set for her. I put her on an exit route. The bull wasn't there opening day, which was awesome. He had pulled into another canyon. I found him the next night. We killed him the next day, just spot and stock. But her first day sit, that was my whole strategy. I know where he runs. This is where we're going to put it. It didn't play out. But, it's the same game. They're mule deer and elk, they're not that different.
Well, I'm looking forward to this season and doing some, getting out. I'm thinking about dragging the kids with me for 4 or 5 days of backpack hunting and scouting. Or not hunting, but just scouting.
Well, another nice thing about ambush hunting is you could put them in the blind with you. Yeah. If you're going to involve your kids, and that's a nice thing. You're not trucking them up and down the mountain. When the rut kicks in, you're doing 13 miles a day. Yeah. That's different. You can't be dragging your kids with you, but if you got a bull patterned and you got a good spot for a blind, you could actually involve your kids or involve people that can't typically be involved because it's doable. But, again, you got to make sure you have a good entrance and exit. Another mistake I see a lot of guys make that do ambush hunting like I do, right? They've listened to my podcast. They're like, okay, DC's done this. I'm going to do this. Yeah. Right. I had guys doing it last year. They blew out one of my hit bulls, like one of my favorite bulls. He was understand. They could hear him walking around. He was in 2 hours before they got into stand. These guys came in with the wrong wind. Like their entrance into their tree stand, they didn't think about the fact. Like they thought, as long as I'm in there before it gets light. No, the game isn't light with elk or mule deer or anything else. The game is scent.
Yeah.
Always. If there's anything you take out of any hunting podcast you've ever listened to or ever done, it's always scent.
Right.
And so they walked in thinking, well, we'll get in before dark. Tree stand has a different wind pattern. We'll be good. Well, the bull was standing under the tree stand.
Right.
Them walking in, he was gone.
Of course.
Game was over.
Of course.
And so, and then we didn't find that bull for another 6 or 7 days. But, that was their mistake. Cost me a little bit. Not really. I don't really. They found another bull. They killed a bull. They're fine.
Well,
but that's the way it goes.
Well, we're out of time. But before we go, tell me what your favorite budget camera is.
Budget camera.
Yeah. What's your favorite value budget camera? Because I don't need to tell if it's the difference between a 380 and a 400. I just need to know they're there.
Yeah, if you're just looking for Intel cameras, I still, I'll get on Amazon, and I think Stealth Cam will do bundles.
Yeah.
They'll do these QVH something cameras, and you get 3 of them for $116 or something. You can find that. You can do that. I don't run anything less than a G series. A lot of my pictures, I'm really trying to pull character in. I'm trying to figure out size. I think you can find G series for around $60-$80 a piece. I think, you can find a G30, G32.
Yeah.
So I don't go super cheap. There is super cheap out there, and there's good cameras for Intel only but at the same time, I had a guy, I think he's here today shooting. He stacked a camera on one of mine. And I looked at it, it's just nice. I'm okay with it. He put it, he was like, I don't want to mess up your bait pile, which is smart. And it was considerate. And he put the camera right on top of mine. And my problem is I looked at his camera. I'm like, dude, you don't have enough range on that $40 camera. I have this set for 80-yard shot or 80-foot shot.
Right.
So I have a nicer camera, and it's going to pull all the Intel. But again, I'm taking people in to spend a lot more money.
True. True.
So he's just pulling Intel. He's going to get what he wants, maybe.
It sucks to have them stolen. I had, I spent, I don't know, about $1,000 on a few cameras, just to 3. All 3 of them were stolen. This is Mount Emily in Oregon.
Yeah.
And they were in totally different areas. And we got pretty creative with how we put them up with locks and everything. But we put them on a water hole, and I think people just in each spot, and some dude, probably same guy. It just kicks you off, man.
They're there.
Do you get many stolen?
I used to pull all my cameras for rifle season because typically for inexperienced bow hunters are a little more considerate. I'd pull them before rifle season. I wouldn't lose any cameras. These are good old boys that this is my spot. This is my dad's spot. We've rifle hunted this for years, whatever. And so that was always my issue. Anymore, they're locked. They're cabled.
Gotcha.
I use tungsten screws. They're 3/8 thick. I could hang a tree stand from my truck cameras. They're so locked down.
Nice.
It's worth the extra $40 for me to, if I'm going to spend $1,000 on cameras, what's another $120 making sure they're secure?
Yeah.
And so for me, I spend a little bit of extra money and take care of them the way I'm supposed to, and I lose a lot less. So far, I've hit 97 of my 125 or whatever fleet. I haven't lost one this year. So I think for the most part, people are getting a little more considerate. Trail cameras are part of the game. You do get those, D-bags out there that do that. But I think they're pretty few and far between. And if you secure them a little bit, it keeps honest people honest.
Nice.
And that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's not like it's, there's just a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. People can find you on Instagram.
Mostly, yeah.
And your handle is?
All my handles on all of them are Ryan DC Outfitters.
Okay.
There might be an underscore in some of them, and I'll pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you got any elk questions, go ahead and DM Ryan anytime.
Yeah. Make them short and sweet, though.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Gritty Podcast. As always, stay gritty.